Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday, March 6, 2025, and I've got all of your stories for your rush hour ride home. On today's podcast, we'll be discussing Tom Sandoval, formerly of Vanderpump Rules. He's back in his family home he shared with Ariana. I'll explain why. And also, Travis Kelce announces on his podcast he is coming back for the next football season. Also, Hot Ones is reaching 10 years, and I'm going to discuss the amazing show and how something so silly as eating hot wings while doing an interview could lead to success. And also Justin versus Blake. I've got updates. Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively's attorneys sparred it out. They duked it out in court today. And I've got my thoughts on what went down. We haven't heard back from the judge yet, the motion on what to do about the protective orders. But all signs point to it looking pretty good for Justin Baldoni at this point. I'll discuss that and why I removed my video. That's right. We had a live stream that shared all of the public audio. I'll explain why I removed it. And speaking of removing things, looks like we're removing the Department of Education. What could go wrong? We'll share that story, and also an update about United Health and how the insurance company is fighting back at medical students who are protesting the insanity known as insurance companies. So lots to get into. Very eclectic today, but that's what we love. All these stories and more coming up right now on The Rush. All right, let's start with Big Travis and what he had to say about coming back. You know, there was a lot of rumors that he might be done playing football, but he kind of had a bad season this past year, and nobody wants to end on a bad note, although as it comes to professional sports, it's usually not up to you when it ends. But here's what he had to say on his podcast, New Heights, with his brother, Jason Kelce.
The thing is that I love playing the game of football.
That's a good reason.
Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce explained why he's coming back. After 12 seasons playing with the Chiefs, the 10-time Pro Bowler said he feels he has more to give to his team than last season, which ended in a 40-22 loss against the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59 and ended the Chiefs' dreams of a historic three-peat.
I don't think it was my best outing. I let my guys down in a lot more moments than I helped them, especially if you look at my track record and how I've been in years past.
And it's like, don't hate on yourself, just shake it off. Now, seriously, Travis Kelce, I mean, he's dating the biggest pop star in the world. He traveled all over the world, you know, partying with her, you know, and getting all of that executive food they give you at the, you know what I mean, that VIP food, you know, you can't turn that down. So he lost a step, no big deal. But speaking of Taylor Swift, we will be discussing her more when it comes to the Justin Baldoni stuff, so stick around. That's only a couple stories away. We're not going to drag it out too long. But yeah, I think it's good to come back. You know, he's still relatively young. What is he, like 35?
Kelce finished last season with the fewest touchdowns, receiving yards, and yards per reception of his career, and only caught one touchdown in the postseason.
How big of a factor was losing a Super Bowl in the decision?
It was probably the biggest factor.
If you would have won, would you have come back for another season?
I mean, it's a pretty cool way to go out, but I think I would still have this love for the game and the feeling, and yeah.
If you want to play, you want to play.
Yeah.
He has one more year on his current deal and hasn't said if this season will be his last.
All right, so my thought was, why doesn't he play for the New England Patriots? Then they can stay at the new home the home that Taylor Swift has in Rhode Island. It's a quick 45 minutes up the highway. What is it, Route 2? What's it, 102? What's the number? Either way, take Scarborough Drive or do whatever the hell. It's been a while since I lived there. But my point is, I take a helicopter, right? He doesn't need to drive. He's got the aerial. I'm sure Taylor Swift has a helicopter for him. So there's your update there. Let's go to Tom Sandoval. Speaking of moving into a new home, Tom Sandoval is back into his home that he is fighting over with his ex Ariana. Here's what he had to say on Watch What Happens Live.
The house yet?
We have not. It's been a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's the way that it's just been. It takes a while. There's a lot.
Who's living in the house?
I am currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you two in contact?
Through her entertainment lawyer.
Wow. Let's go to the
All right. So Tom Sandoval is not, you know, he's got no contact with Ariana, which is a smart thing for her. Look, as long as they're splitting the mortgage right now, like, let it all play out, you know? Why would I couldn't understand why they were living there in the first place. Wouldn't you want to get out of the home that has all that toxicity? I mean, there is no amount of sage that could make me want to live with a cheating ex. You know what I mean? But Ariana, she's crushing it. She's making a ton of money. So, you know, I guess they're trying to figure out what what the home's worth and divide up all their assets. I don't understand why they haven't figured that out yet. Just sell it and split the proceeds. Now, they probably have one of those like 2.99% interest rates that they got a couple years ago, which you would hate to see leave, because, when you get to the ones I'm stuck in, you can't afford a home that nice. But either way, there's your update nobody asked for. All right, in other updates with regard to inflation and tariffs, looks like Best Buy and Target is warning consumers this weekend you will see the higher prices.
If you are one of the millions of people who, like me, shop at Target and Best Buy, get ready to spend more at the checkout starting as early as this week. Target's CEO yesterday said customers will likely see higher prices on things like strawberries, avocados, and bananas in the coming days, which he says is all a direct effect of President Trump's 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico. Those are goods from Mexico. Best Buy, meanwhile, echoed the sentiments saying price hikes at its stores are likely, emphasizing the importance of international trade to the electronics industry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of electronics come from China. There's tariffs there. They come from other countries. So that's going to be reflected in the tax. The tariff tax is paid for by consumers. Now, if there's a 25% tax, maybe the country that's selling us the goods, maybe they absorb a part of that. But the truth is, we are going to be paying more as long as these tariffs exist. And people can put pressure on the administration to drop them. They can do whatever they want. But vote with your dollar, and this is the world we live in. All right, Sean Evans spends 10 years of Hot Ones on YouTube, the best dumb idea ever. Now, the only thing I want to say about this is for anyone considering content creating out there, is that there is no such thing as a dumb idea when it comes to the internet. This is a dude who decided to interview people while eating hot wings that get progressively hotter. This is the dumbest idea in the world, and it's made him a multi-millionaire because it just goes to show content, painting outside the lines, doing something that's a little bit different. You would never have expected it to have this amount of success, and it does. So if you have an idea out there, if my audience, there's something that you think you're really good at or want to explore or have a curiosity about, give it a shot. We all have iPhones. You can get on YouTube for free. When I started YouTube back in the day, you couldn't upload a video over 10 minutes long. How funny is that? Everyone was like, really? You got to make your videos under 90 seconds. And what we have learned from the audience is if you make good content, people will watch it regardless of the length. In fact, the longer it is, the higher chance you have to hook people. So to all my audience out there, this is your motivation. Find your hot ones and go pursue it. All right, folks, here's your Blake Lively update. We were live in court today to discuss the protective order, which was pretty juicy, but I'm going to summarize it for you. I made a 2-hour live stream about it, and I have since taken it down. It is private now, and that is because multiple content creators and, people that work in federal court told me, Dave, they'll probably not mess with you here, but you could be sanctioned or reprimanded or whatnot. So your boy doesn't need to deal with it. It's not worth it to deal with whatever heat might come from the federal system. I don't need cops trailing me. Not that it's a big deal, but so they made this live stream. They made the court appearance public, so you could call in to listen to it. They just don't want people to redistribute it on their own channels. Why? I have no idea, to be quite honest, but that's the rule. I broke it. So because of that, I can swallow my pride and my super chat money. No, I can swallow my pride and take it down. So I took it down. But I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. There were some interesting moments, but honestly, it wasn't like a trial where there's like, objection, you can't handle the truth. It was just a lot of, Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively. What they were arguing over was Blake Lively's PR lawyers, the lawyers for the PR company, didn't want full access to what is discoverable between Blake Lively and other celebrities, that being probably Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift has a big, important image to protect, but Justin Baldoni's side, Brian Friedman, argued, hey, if it's relevant to the case, you don't get any preferential treatment because you're a celebrity. Blake Lively's side argued, well, there's like security risks and things like that. So all of the news rags are picking it up. It's just such a funny world where as a journalist, you're allowed to listen to the court and write it down, but you can't play it. And I just think it's important to hear what the judge's tone is. I think it's important to hear what the lawyer's tones are, but that is no longer available publicly. Some people have asked, well, Dave, will you give us the live stream privately on patreon.com/Dave Neal? I can't tell you that I will do that or not. I don't think I am allowed to legally, but for those on patreon.com/Dave Neal, maybe you'll get it. Maybe you won't. What do I know? And this is by Rolling Stones. Blake Lively wants to protect conversations with their famous friends amid Justin Baldoni lawsuit. Justin Baldoni's filings have already indicated that Taylor Swift was privy to some relevant events in the ongoing lawsuit between the actor, Lively, and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Now, if you listened live, you might have the same opinion I do, which is Blake Lively's lawyers didn't really make a strong point. Now, they're the ones arguing for the protective order. Justin Baldoni's side is saying, look, why don't we do it on a case-by-case basis? We don't care about your security detail or any of those specifics, but to say you want a protective order, what if there's information between those text messages which shows that Blake Lively was operating in a way that is, very damning? Now, I'll tell you what, if the judge denies Blake Lively's protective order request, and then Blake Lively ends up dismissing her case or wants to settle, that, my friends, would be very, very interesting, because that would mean somebody doesn't want whatever on those text messages to get out. In other news, Daily Mail also reporting Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds clash with Justin Baldoni again, as couple claim their profound medical issues are at risk of being leaked. Yeah, I know, but that's the deal, right? If you're going to claim that you were harassed and that you have all these mental health issues because of it, that stuff's going to come out in court. And I hate that for the instance where I hate that innocent people feel like they don't want to be dragged through court because of what might come of that. But at the same time, Justin Baldoni was dragged publicly. And this is the defense that Justin Baldoni's attorney said in the live stream, which is now deleted on my channel and most certainly won't be available at patreon.com/Dave Neal. But in defense of, I was like, you know what? I've already been sued enough for this decade. I don't need another lawsuit. But in defense of Justin Baldoni, Brian Friedman argued, you guys with 170 or 80 plus pages of text messages aired this out. You coordinated in a 5-month behind the scenes smear of Justin Baldoni with the New York Times. So they are it's very rich of Blake Lively's side to be arguing, well, we don't want all these private things to come out. But it's like again, if it's true that Blake Lively doesn't have any evidence of her claims and that this was just a smear by her, you kind of started it. You threw the first public punch. So that's where they stand on that. All right, let's move it along. And by the way, we'll have more to cover with this. There'll be more to pick apart, more meat on the bone from that conversation. It's a little sad that I deleted it, but hey, the rules are the rules. The judge said, and maybe I just didn't understand it at the time, but the judge said no rebroadcasting of this publicly available live stream. In the future, I'll still be listening to those live streams, and I'll just try to do. You know what I should do is get a puppet show. I'll get the transcript, and then we'll do puppetry because apparently you need a marionette to share this stuff with your audience. Pretty dumb if you ask me, but it is so funny to see how tightly you have to talk to the judge. Your Honor, he was interrupting people when they were making claims that, he was like, I'll be the one to judge X, Y, and Z. There was multiple times when he interrupted lawyers on Blake Lively's side to be like, you need more evidence. Give me examples, that type of thing, which made me believe he's probably going to deny the Blake Lively request for the protective order. That's what I believe is going to happen. But we'll have to see. And we'll probably know tomorrow or the next day. I'm assuming it'll be a quick turnaround. And then from there, there'll be nothing else in the way of the discovery starting. So wild times indeed. Well, Donald Trump is set to axe entire Department of Education with executive order today. The order, labeled pre-decisional, directs newly appointed Education Secretary Linda McMahon, who is the wife of billionaire Vince McMahon, the founder of the WWE, to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department. Now, you might wonder, what does this mean? And to be quite honest, I'm not that educated on it, so I'll be pulling out of my ass. It sounds like they want the states to be in control of what they teach in their education, which sounds reasonable, except sadly, there's a lot of states or some that want to rewrite history. If you went to school in, say, Kentucky, you might not have been taught that the Civil War was about slavery. You'll be taught, no, it's about states' rights and other issues like that. Growing up in one state versus another, you might not be taught what was believed to be very core values and beliefs, and like, this is what happened. So it is a little scary to think that history could be rewritten if the wrong person at the state level decides to take matters into their own hands. Now, if you wanted to argue that the Department of Education is over budgeted, there's too many people in the sort of class of non-educators, okay, fine. I think teachers should be getting paid more money. If there's too much bloat in the system, audit it and get them out. But to dismantle the whole thing, to me, just seems like another example where we're moving a little too quickly. And speaking of moving too quickly, we have maybe a presidential hopeful for the Democratic Party in the next election, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, interviewing Charlie Kirk, a right-wing podcaster. I'll share that clip and kind of explain what's going on next. All right, so now becomes the political content, and this triggers a lot of people. Hey, if you ever feel triggered, wonder why, look into that on your end. But I do share this content because Gavin Newsom has a podcast that just come out. And I said the other day, I think this is a really good idea. And people were like, oh my gosh, Gavin Newsom's the worst. Okay, fine. Well, don't vote for him. You know what I mean? But I think it's a smart idea for all politicians to have a podcast. People's first argument, and by the way, I mean, he's the governor of California, one of the largest economies in the world, not just in the United States, in the world. I believe it's the 5th largest economy in the world. For all the people that are like, oh, we don't want to help California. California pays a hell of a lot of money into, I think it alone subsidizes like a dozen other states based on how much money it pays into federal taxes. California is doing just fine is my point. If that earthquake comes and rips it off and just floats it off into the ocean, assuming it doesn't lose its tech in other industries, but like in the hypothetical, it would be flourishing. Okay. Flourishing. It's a Mediterranean climate. It's beautiful. Homes are expensive. But, the food's not too bad. Okay. So anyhow, he does this podcast where he's going to be interviewing people that have different opinions, and he has Charlie Kirk on. I think this is such a good idea. When you're in my position, you see how much shame is used when you talk to someone on the other side of the aisle. Whenever Democrats would go on Fox News, people would get so ashamed, and I'm just yelling at the top of my throat, like, you got to meet voters where they are. So you might not like Gavin Newsom, but if he has a good idea, and I haven't listened to the podcast, but if he has a good idea and presents it to Charlie Kirk, find that middle ground. Charlie Kirk seems to be the type that when you talk to him, you realize you do have a lot in common. Although I think he's also the type that has a lot of sort of like conservative values that might obstruct and get in the way of other people's values. Like, it's okay for you to want to do whatever the hell you want or have your own moral barometer, but don't let that get in the way of somebody else's personal freedoms, is my opinion. So anyway, I wanted to share a few clips. Like I said, I think this is really good. Folks will say, Gavin Newsom's state just burnt down. He shouldn't be doing a podcast. I disagree. I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. As California rebuilds, and by the way, it wasn't the whole state, select communities, but as they rebuild, they're going to need to adapt to the new world order of communication, which is good long-form content. If we all want the same thing, across the country, Americans, if we all want the same thing, happiness, health, security, love, and protection and all that, if we all want the same thing, then these conversations are really important. Let's play a couple clips.
Last night, trying to put my son to bed, he's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no, this morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is
you canceled school for like 2 years. Once one day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you.
All right, that's a good line that Charlie Kirk got in, and now here is more of the conversation.
Talked about it the other day. A lot of folks were talking about that Carville article where he talked about
roll over and play dead.
Roll over. In essence, he said that. I think it was a strategic retreat, right? That we need to come back. Trump's starting to implode. His numbers are getting soft. And this was even before the tariff issues, et cetera. And then come back and strike when hot. And I immediately, no BS, thought about you, who's just 24/7 flooding the zone, owning this space, every day getting a convert, every day picking up 1, 2, 10,000 folks, continuing the momentum, coming out of this damn election. And then I'm thinking about, we're going to stand back.
Look at Charlie Kirk's positioning here. This is one of the issues that I have with audience capture is you feel like, and again, I'm not saying he's doing this right now, but you feel like you have to speak to your audience and not lose them. So, and again, maybe they have a good conversation here, but the critics of this conversation will say, oh no, you're talking to that evil guy. You can't be doing that. Listen, you got to have these conversations. You got to be able to talk. You're not going to win any new voters by just playing to your base.
And watch you run circles around us for 6 months, the next 2 or 3 years, waiting for the moment to finally strike, struck me as not necessarily the best advice, and it's not a knock on Carville, who I have deep respect for. What's your thoughts?
That's okay. So I don't have to. He's right about one thing in the last 40 years. It's economy stupid, and boy, he spent down that one line pretty amazingly. Yeah, I hope you guys retreat.
You kind of like the
more
advice.
For us.
You like the advice.
There's no opposition. There's no activist spark. You guys are posting these cringe videos on social media.
What are the videos? What are the ones that
I don't know.
most
This
cringy?
like harmonious thing of like 22 senators all saying the same
You
thing.
didn't like that, yeah.
I didn't like it. Go ahead. Go do more of that.
What do you do?
Please.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
Yeah, look, ideas are important. And I think there is, the trouble here is that Charlie Kirk says, you guys do this, as if we're all one monolith, which I think people shouldn't act that way. I think if you can help the middle class, you will convert people. And I don't think Trump's doing that. Why? Because at his speech the other night, he didn't talk about healthcare. He didn't talk about home affordability. He didn't talk much about the inflation and all of the, the GDP and things like that. We need to make it so that people's dollar goes further and so that the middle class can feel like they can afford a vacation and not live on such a fritz. The lower class too. So these conversations are really, really good to have. This is how out of touch people are. This, again, coming from where I live now in Nashville, Tennessee, is an evangelical financial advice tycoon named Dave Ramsey. You might have heard of him. Here's what he has to say about home prices and about is owning multiple homes greedy. Now, what's interesting about this is I think out of the rubble of the mess of a world we live in, we should have people rising up that are speaking. And this is a problem that exists both with Democrats and Republicans, corporate-owned homes. It's just like corporate-owned homes is the same problem as health insurance. It is people maximizing profits off of other people's, what should be their unalienable rights, which is a right to health and access to health care, and also a right to have a home. In the world we live in 2025, we should all have a right to own a home or get there. If we can afford the monthly payment, we should be able to own a home. But sadly, so many people, they keep that carrot just far enough away on that stick that you cannot catch up to the rent prices and you can't get approved because of this fraudulent credit system. So it's the people that have the money are able to consume more. And then when the economy takes a bad turn, they keep on buying and gobbling up. So here's an interesting conversation. I couldn't agree less with the guy's point, but it's interesting to open up everyone's eyes to it.
Considered ethical for people to own so many houses. I'm just wondering how, as a Christian, this isn't seen as greed. Don't you know that buying up all these homes is what's causing the housing shortage?
Let's just start with not the spiritual part, but your economic understanding. That's not what's causing the housing shortage. Investors buying up houses is not causing the housing shortage. Okay, period. So you're just wrong. Now
that is it. Can we stay on that for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay, I can look out my window and see several hundred homes that are being built right now that are owned by a private equity group, which means you put money in, they buy the homes, rent them out to other people, and then those renters help increase the sort of capital, and the investors get the money back. That is, I mean, it's like a modern day form of slavery.
Because that is a thing going around, that these massive hedge funds or Blackstone, like all these, they're coming in and buying up.
But they don't have a soul.
That's right. Okay, so
hedge funds don't have a soul.
Yeah. So because an individual investor, right, for the average person out there who has maybe 2 or 3 rental homes, right, they're on baby steps and they're doing it.
They're not causing the problem. But Blackstone, those guys are buying up houses. So that's true.
Is that is that affecting the housing market at all? Because that is.
It probably is to some extent, but not as much as TikTok says it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some extent means it's an extent, and I think it should be dealt with. We should be passing laws that private equity firms cannot buy single-family homes. We have a housing crisis, which means in a crisis, you have to change the rules. And they should dissolve these companies that are worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, that are building homes, very shittily made homes, in order to rent them out to people that can't quite afford a home. Let's take the money that we have to help people get in the door so that they can afford their first home and they can build that wealth. If they build wealth, if the middle class builds wealth, not just giving it away by renting out their time, but if they build that wealth, then they'll have the power to start their own business, buy things from the farmer's market. It is good for the economy.
So, I mean, you really don't want your economic lessons on TikTok. I'll just help you with that in general. But anyway.
You're on TikTok, though.
I know, but...
So his daughter is just roasting him. She's like, you're on TikTok. What are you talking about? This is a show about financial advice. You're doing the things you're telling people not to do.
That just proves that I'm lacking in judgment. But I own, I don't even know, 15, 20 houses among about.
If you don't know how many houses you own, I'll argue it's too many. Like I said, because there are people that can't afford to get a foot in the door. Until everybody who wants to buy a home can, I don't think we should be owning more than a handful. And even then, I understand that house hacking, you don't have to work. You'll live off of other people paying their rent. No, some people want to rent. Some people, if you have enough money, you can decide to rent because of whatever option, your short-term living, fine. That will exist. But the problem is those that do want to own a home that can't.
And a bunch of commercial real estate as well. How is that not greed? Because I don't own anything. I'm a Christian. And that means God owns it, and I'm managing it for him.
All right, so that's insanity. That's insanity because I don't have a direct pipeline to what God thinks, but I'll tell you what, Jesus didn't own multiple homes. Jesus was actually for the common person. He was for the person that was struggling in the lower class and the poor and helping out migrants. Jesus was for protecting and providing for the community. So either way, I reject this. I just reject it. And you know what? My parents own I think 1 or 2 homes. They rent them out to a family member. But I think at the very least, don't be worried about people that own a couple homes. Be worried about those that are house hacking, flipping homes the Airbnb industry has destroyed the housing market. Here's an interesting story I want to share. A lady went viral for reporting to her medical school, or she was reported to her medical school, saying that United Healthcare CEO can rot.
I was reported to my medical school for posting on Instagram that the CEO of United Healthcare can rot. This is a good opportunity to say that some of us need to really reflect on this weird instinct we have to police the people around us, especially those of us in healthcare. And I know that other people have also talked about this because some of us are clearly far more concerned about being polite and following the rules.
And that's the world we live in, where a lot of people are still being polite, whereas other countries and civilizations, heads would be rolling right now because it is life or death for a lot of people out there. It is life or death whether people can afford healthcare based on the insurance system denying claims that should have been accepted and using artificial intelligence. Let me tell you something about AI. Artificial intelligence is being used to deny people their claims before they even read what the claim is about. And these are claims where people have life-saving needs. They're in surgery, they're in chemo, they're all these things. And healthcare providers like this one are speaking out and then getting reported by those insurance companies. You should be scared about that. And likewise, people were talking about how the rent prices are too high. It's those same artificial intelligent apps that are price fixing rent in different communities. So if you have all of the homes owned by BlackRock and several other private equity firms, they get to decide, you know what? Rather than lower the price of a 1-bedroom to $1,750, we'd rather let it go dormant. We'll write off the loss and we won't fill that home because we do our 1-bedrooms for $2,100 in this town. And then they'll all agree to that. The Department of Justice is actually looking into it because the meat industry has been accused of price fixing in the same way as the home rental industry. It's absolutely wild. And our last story of the day, breaking news here, that Trump is looking to change their policy as it relates to NATO agreements.
We have breaking exclusive NBC News reporting. President Trump is now considering making a major change to the United States participation in the NATO alliance. The administration is discussing a potential new policy in which the U.S. might not come to the defense of a NATO ally if it were attacked, if that country doesn't meet the defense spending threshold. That's according to 3 current and former senior U.S. officials and 1 congressional official. Now, if that happens, it would mean the U.S. would be going against the core tenet of the alliance, including Article 5, where an attack on one member is an attack on all.
Listen, so I understand the idea. Whatever the GDP is, you pay like 1% of your GDP to NATO and then everyone pays into this system. I understand the idea. I understand not wanting the US to pay a higher percentage. I mean, look, we send, bombs to Israel, and Israel gives their constituents they get free healthcare, right? Do I have that right? And it's like they've got more freedoms than we have in some ways, and yet we're still financing them. It's almost like I'm going to pay you money to subsidize you, but you're driving a nicer car than me. And I'm just using Israel as an example here, so I understand the idea, but also how bad does it look saying we're going to rewrite the rules of this agreement and it makes the agreement look weaker? So the closest country to Ukraine that's in NATO is Poland, right? And if Russia takes Ukraine, they are literally a stone's throw away over the other side of that fence from a NATO country, which means if they go to war with Poland, they are going to be going to war with NATO. Now, is Trump saying, well, if Poland didn't pay enough money, we're not going to defend them? And then who's next after Poland? And who's next after them? And shortly, that Atlantic Ocean's starting to get smaller and smaller, especially with these missiles that exist out there. So it's complicated. And it's good that we're having these conversations, and it's great that we have you guys here joining us, and we'll continue to have these conversations. If you want to join my Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/Dave Neal. You might find some juicy content over there, patreon.com/Dave Neal. Otherwise, you can check me out on Instagram @DNeals, and there's a link in the description if you want to join the mailing list. You definitely should do that. I'll be sharing all of my tour dates and where I'll be performing stand-up, so go check that out. We'll be back in the morning. I'm Dave Neal, and this is The Rush.